With UCF adding so much talent to their team this spring cycle, who else is in line for a Big 12 title shot and can take it away from UCF this upcoming season? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's been a day, guys. It's been a day. Not going to be a long episode. Not too much football news to talk about. I think the biggest news for UCF was Javarius Johnson committing to UCF. Obviously, that's a big one. He's been a guy, obviously, was on Auburn, has 1 year left. He's been in the transfer portal for, a month or so. And I always anticipated UCF kind of getting him. I know there was a couple other schools, Utah specifically, that were going after him. And again, it helps the depth, right? You get a guy like Jacoby Jones in this spring to come over to UCF, and to get a guy like Javarius Johnson. I think I was texting Nick the other day, and I said it is clear that UCF is searching for, listen, like, you can get all the depth you want. UCF is searching for that third guy. UCF is searching for that third wide receiver that they can throw out there. And again, everybody's high on UCF right now. Now, there's a lot of people calling UCF the dark horse, which that can be a positive and a negative thing, because if you remember last year, Texas Tech going in to last season was the dark horse of the Big 12. Like, Texas Tech can make a run, and look what Texas Tech did. So it's a positive and a negative. You can have all the talent in the world, but at the end of the day, if you don't go out on the field and show it, then being a dark horse really doesn't all matter, right? But with that being said, when I was thinking of what to do with this episode, I think it's important, because even though we might all think UCF has a really good chance to make a run and go to the college, not the college football playoff, they would be in the college football playoff if they win, the Big 12, but who can really hinder UCF from getting to that Big 12 title game? Who in the Big 12 is really a realistic contender to take a spot away from UCF in that final game or in a college football playoff? I have the list of all the Big 12 teams, and I'm only going to talk about, we're going to talk briefly about all these teams. Not every team in the Big 12, only the ones that really have a honest chance at having a really good year. Now, again, I want to make this very clear. With UCF's roster, a roster is just a roster. But if you look at the talent on this roster compared to all the other Big 12 teams, this could potentially be a 9, 10, 11 win team. Once we get close to the season, we will go into our real predictions and talk about where that is. But even Nick is a very even keel, doesn't want to get too high or too low, keeps it 100. Even Nick said, because we originally on our two early predictions, which was before the spring camp, we said 8-4 was probably where we were at. And even Nick just said 8 wins at this point, 9 would be a disappointment. To which I 100% agree. I think if you're going for if you go 8-4, though to most that'd be a really good season, I think for UCF with the roster they have built, it would be a big disappointment. But let's go through these teams and kind of give you my take on where I kind of stand. So I think the most obvious one that we can talk about is Utah, right? Cameron Rising finally going to be healthy this year, which I think is the most important thing. Listen, once Utah agreed to come into the Big 12, that was kind of they're going to easily come in this year and be the most dominant team. Now, again, you could be the most dominant on paper. You can have the best players. At the end of the day, it's how you put it on the field in the Big 12. But Utah, what they did in the Pac-12, they were the best team every time they stepped down on the floor. And last year, even with a backup, even with the injury problems that they still had an incredible year. So if you're looking at UCF and saying, what's the positive with UCF compared to Utah? The positive is UCF doesn't have to face Utah until the last week of the season. The positive is you get Utah at home instead of having to go on the road to Utah. So, listen, this is the post-spring. We kind of have an idea of where the rosters are at right now and what they're going to look like heading into fall. I think Utah has the best roster. I think they have a really favorable schedule for them, and we'll see what happens. But I think for UCF specifically, it's if you win that final game against Utah, I think you're looking really, really good. But at the same time, this Utah team is hungry. They have a really experienced quarterback that can do a lot with the football. And for UCF, it's going to be how would you stop that? But Utah, I think right now, again, you get two spots, two teams in the Big 12 championship. I think a lot of people have Utah slated to be in that position. But again, if UCF and Utah are neck and neck in the standings and record-wise, you have a chance in the final week to really go after that game. All right, so that's kind of the Utah of it. Now, some people say Kansas State. I'm going to be honest with Kansas State. It's really going to be up to Avery Johnson and what Avery Johnson does. I think a lot of people are excited about Avery Johnson and what he can do at quarterback. Obviously, Will Howard went to Ohio State. I don't think Kansas State, in my opinion, I know Chris Kleiman's a hell of a coach, and I think Avery Johnson's going to be really, really good. I don't see Kansas State being able to make it to the Big 12 title. I think they are contenders for sure, so that's why we're talking about them. I think they can do something special. They have, again, some really good running backs. DJ Giddens, obviously, adding Dylan Edwards. They're dangerous offensively. They're going to be in the conversation. And I think, listen, UCF held their own against them. Now, UCF doesn't have to play Kansas State this year, which always helps. But you can definitely count them as a contender for sure. And it's really going to be up to Avery Johnson. If Avery Johnson can be what everybody assumes he is, they're going to have a chance. Kansas. Now, Kansas is a weird one. Lance Leipold, obviously one of the best coaches in the conference, if not the country. He's going to be, in my opinion, I don't know if he'll be at Kansas post this year. I think this is probably his last year at Kansas because I think every single program that's going to fire their head coach coming up after this year is going to want Lance Leipold, whether that be Florida, whatever SEC school wants him. He's going to be on the list for a lot of these jobs. Jalen Daniels, that's the big question. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay, because again, last year I think Kansas, if Jalen Daniels just stayed healthy and you have a really good running back in Devin Neal, I think they could have made some noise. If he stays healthy, I think Kansas makes it all the way to the end and gives himself a really good chance. And again, that's another team that UCF doesn't have to face, and you don't have to face Kansas or Kansas State. So again, it's going to be, can you win the game you're supposed to win and kind of get yourself in a good position to, because Kansas State and Kansas do not have this entirely easy schedules. Now, they don't have to play Utah or Oklahoma State, which helps. But for UCF, I think not having to play a Kansas or Kansas State also helps as well. Arizona. Arizona is going to be a weird one. Obviously, you lose your head coach in Jed Fish. You bring in new coach Brent Brennan. So that's going to be the question, because I think if you look at the roster, you have Noah Fafita, you have McMillan, those guys are going to perform really well. But the question is, can Coach Brent Brennan really get the team firing on all cylinders? A coaching change is difficult, but it's not impossible, right? Obviously, you look at UCF, right? You look at losing Scott Frost, bringing in Josh Heupel. UCF went undefeated that year. So Arizona is talented enough. Now, the good thing with UCF is UCF plays them again at home. So a tough matchup. I think it's the space game too. You're playing Arizona at home. So a lot of these games you can look at for UCF and say you're playing a contender, but you're getting them at home. So Arizona has a really good chance. I think I like Utah a little bit more. When I say a little, I mean a good chunk more. Because, again, we know the coach with Utah. We know what the quarterback's going to do with that coach. So I think when it comes to Arizona, it's really just going to be how easy is the transition with their new head coach and how that all fits. But Arizona's got a really good roster, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough playing them in Orlando. But again, you like that you get them at home. Iowa State was a team that surprised everybody last year. They went 6-3 last year in Big 12 play. I easily see them contending again. And listen, there's going to be a lot of contenders. I think this is a 7 to 8 Big 12 team race, and two of these teams are going to be in the Big 12 title. Iowa State, again, you've got a really good young quarterback. You played really well in the Big 12 last year. I see that happening again. And this is going to be the tough one for UCF. UCF has to go on the road to Iowa State. Not an easy place to play. So, again, another contender. This one's a little bit tougher. You have to go and get a win on the road. But, I could easily see them stringing along some wins here. West Virginia, we saw them last year. Garrett Green, obviously, they beat us at home. I really like Garrett Green, but I think UCF gave up a lot of opportunities that game. They had 4 turnovers that game, and you kind of felt if UCF just put some good drives together, they had the potential to blow the doors off of West Virginia. That didn't happen. West Virginia played a really good, sound, fundamental football game. And Garrett Green's really talented. C.J. Nelson's really talented. Neil Brown was practically going to get fired before last season and saved his job. So it's interesting to see what West Virginia can do. Do I think they make the Big 12 title game? No. Do I think they'll be really competitive throughout the year and give some people fits? Yes. So I wouldn't consider West Virginia necessarily a hardcore contender, but I would consider them a team that can scare a lot of people. And then I'm kind of in the same boat with Oklahoma State. Again, I think Oklahoma State's returning a lot of talented players. Obviously, I think they're going to run the football down a lot of teams' throats, but I think a lot of teams are expecting that, especially this year, going up against a guy like Ollie Gordon. But I think if I had to really circle teams as teams that, if I'm UCF, these are going to be the teams that you need to scoreboard watch every week. It's going to be the Utahs, the Kansas States, the Kansas, the Arizona, and then that's kind of your tier 1 for me in terms of that. And then your tier 2 would be the Oklahoma State, the Iowa State, and the West Virginia. I'm going to be honest, I know a lot of people are probably expecting Colorado out of me. Colorado, to be completely honest, I think they have a chance to be really competitive, and I think they have a chance to surprise a lot of people. But I do think there is a little bit of, they don't have that good of a defense. Their defense is going to be really bad. Offensively, I think they can do a lot, but it's going to be, do they become one-dimensional? Can they run the football? Do they have a good offensive line? So I don't see Colorado. I don't see Colorado beating UCF when they come to Orlando, and I don't see Colorado beating a lot of these Big 12 teams this year. But who knows? I may be wrong. I don't see them in the title contention. If Shedeur Sanders lights it up and is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, then it's going to be scary for a lot of Big 12 teams. But I don't see Colorado making any noise. But in regards to bring it all around and come back to UCF, I think a lot of teams are going to be afraid of UCF. I think a lot of teams are going to be scared to play what UCF has to offer the conference this specific season. But again, just like with Colorado, it's like, can UCF play some really good fundamental defense? Can they play some sound defense, when they go on the road, when they are at home? Are they going to be as leaky when it comes to the run game? These are all questions we're going to answer in the coming months. But if UCF wants to be one of those teams, right, in the conversation, in the championship at the end, you need to be a good fundamental team all the way around. You can't just have a top 10 offense and then expect, 123rd run defense to win you football games at the end. It's just not gonna cut it. So for UCF to be successful, have to have a really good offense, an okay average defense that gets stops when it needs to and limits possessions. And again, I think UCF with the schedule they have can really, really make some noise. All right, guys, like I said, short one today. Just thought we'd, again, get an episode out. Really appreciate all the love, as always. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Again, we are releasing episodes every single week throughout the offseason, so please keep up with us. Please follow me on Twitter at Sean M.R. Green. I post there all the time for updates on UCF and the Orlando Magic, so please, if you want, go follow me there. All right, everybody, this has been Charge On, presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.